asked other people to come and share with you as well what they do. I started without knowing at all what I was doing. I took some paper cups outside and filled them with soil from our yard and tried to start my seeds in that, and I didn't have very good luck, and I progressed from there. But anyway, the very easiest way to plant seeds and to grow seeds is to plant them directly outside when the weather's the right temperature for that type of seed. And so why would we want to start seeds indoors? Sherry?
Because they take too long to grow to maturity, you lose your whole season.
Thank you. Yes, that's one very good reason, especially our peppers, our tomato seeds. They take 100 days before they begin to produce any fruit. Any other reasons why we might want to start seeds indoors? Yes.
If you're successful at it, then you might get some fruit or vegetables earlier, like tomatoes. A lot of people like to start tomatoes early, so they start getting produce earlier in the season.
Right. Okay,
Saves money on bedding out plants.
maybe. Yes, okay.
I've had birds come and eat the seeds that I planted.
Yes, that's one good reason is sometimes disease, insects, birds will take the little tiny plants that are popping out, whereas if you can grow them a little bit bigger and then plant them out, they'll get a better start. So those are some of the reasons. Another reason may be that we can't go and buy the plants that we see that we think we want to try. And it's maybe just fun, maybe a hobby of ours that we want to try to grow some different things. I do have a word of warning if you want to try to grow different things. Don't try to grow all of your garden things that you haven't tried before. My success rate is about 50% with new things that I try. I have different success rates depending on the catalogs I decide to try. If they have really exotic things, my success rate is less. If they have tried and true award-winning items, then my success rate is greater.
Okay. I have
Yes,
a
Eric.
question. Success rate being in that that they grow it all, or success rate being that you actually, like if it's a vegetable or something that your family likes it?
Success rate being that it produces good fruit that we like and does well.
Okay.
So, yes, and in a catalog, you might see something. I saw last year some flowers I really wanted to grow, and I started them inside, and it was a bit tricky. I think there were some directions on the package that told me that I needed to cover it, and I covered it with saran wrap. And finally, all the little seedlings, after a long time, they all sprouted, and I put them out and took good care of them. I put them in a very nice place, and nothing happened, nothing at all. And finally, I gave up. And then in the fall, there was one beautiful flower. Well, to me, that's not worth all that work. And I went at that point and checked it out on the internet, found out that that kind of seed is difficult to grow. And they don't tell you that in the catalog. So you might want to check things out online if you're trying something new. Okay, I started out by telling you about potting, the potting soil I used when I just brought it in from the yard. Some of the problems with that is that it might contain seed, it might be, well, in our area it is too heavy of the soil. It might contain diseases, and so you'll have a lot better success rate if you buy your soil. And this is where expense comes in. We'll tell you all these things to do, and they cost money. And so if you're just going to want to grow a few plants, it's probably less expensive just to go and buy your plants at a nursery. So anyway, this is what I've had the best success with. You can use potting soil. There's different qualities of potting soil, and so I've had various success rates with using potting soil. Seed starting soil has always worked for me.
Do you have to get that in a nursery or?
You need to buy it at a nursery. I think you probably can get it online, yes.
Can you just use compost? Will that work?
Do you know, there's some directions in the handout that I gave you, and yes, you can mix your own soil, and this handout gives you some guidelines, so yes. Okay, once I have my soil, the next thing is containers, and I'm gonna let Becky and Diana tell you what they use for containers, but first I'll show you what I've had success with. I always put my containers in a tray like this, and when I'm starting my seeds, broccoli, tomatoes, peppers, I usually use these with these 4 divisions. And I fill up my tray and I plant those. And once the seedlings sprout, if they grow to be bigger, I think tomatoes mainly, I will put in these bigger ones and continue to grow. I haven't done that with the peppers or the broccoli.
Do you start melons?
I do start melons. Okay, the melons, the squash, some of the plants that grow bigger quite quickly, I'll also plant here. We need to talk just a minute about timing. If you plant your seeds too early and get them started indoors too early and the plants get too big, then you're not successful out in the garden. It's better actually to have them a little too small than a little too big. And there is a guide, the very last page, let's see. It's not the last page of your handout. It looks like this. There is a guide that tells you how early to plant seeds, also on your seed packets. They'll say if you start indoors to start this early. And so broccoli, you plant 6 to 7 weeks before you want to plant it outdoors. Onions, 10 to 12. Now, I don't think I've ever planted my onions that much early. I've planted them a couple months before I put them outdoors, and it still has
So
worked.
you grow your onions from seeds, not stuff?
Yes, and well, let me just tell you how I do the onions while we're here. Yes, Laura?
Before we go on to that, can we hear the rest of the containers part?
We can, yeah. Shall we do that? Let's go ahead, Becky and Diana, tell us about your containers.
Well, nothing really big. I save from year to year as well. I started out with buying, the little setup at the store, and then I've just saved the tray. And these tops are really nice for when you're beginning your seeds because they keep the moisture inside, and it also gives room to grow. And I just water them every day. I started these about 10 days ago, and
What are they?
these are 2 different flowers. These are cosmos, and as you can see, they grow really long. And these are stock. They're both flowering ornamentals, but if you keep the lid over it and have the light close, that seems to provide enough heat and maintains the moisture that they do really well. Now, I got this tray from a class I took at Thanksgiving Point, and it's got, as you can see, a lot of really small wells there. So after they get about to this point, you can transplant them out, and then I reuse this again, throw a little more fresh soil in and start another batch, because in a week, I can transplant those a week to 10 days into the bigger containers as well. So I start out really small and then move to the bigger ones.
Do you sterilize them every time?
I just wash them out really well, but I don't sterilize them. Now, if you were starting cuttings, you'd need to sterilize it. And that would be just a 10% Clorox solution. Wash all the debris out and then rinse them in Clorox and let them air dry. And these are just some that I transplanted this morning. If you're going to, should we talk about transplant just really quick, and then I've pretty much. Okay. If you're going to transplant, don't hold them by the stem, grab them by a leaf. Or with these, they've got a little hole in them that is pencil size. Pop it up from the bottom, grab it, and then put it in. And I use Miracle Grow potting soil. I just get a big bag because it's multi-purpose. I use it every year. The Costco bag lasts me a year and a half or so, and that's all that I use for it. And I spray them down with a spray bottle to moisten them because a stream of water is just going to disrupt the soil. And this has about 1/4 strength of liquid fertilizer in it, this all-purpose plant fertilizer. And that gives them just a little bit of nutrients to jumpstart them. And
So that's how you water them,
yep,
just spray?
yep, and have the soil moist, and then, just spray them down. It's very gentle, it gets the water down there and doesn't disrupt the seedlings when they're very, very small. And I think that's about it. Any questions?
And so where do you get the containers? You said you got those ones.
You can, well, this one, I'm not sure, you might have to go, just look around, but I've seen various sizes of containers. I was at Home Depot just this week, and they had a set that was about that big of a well, and multiple ones that were in a flat tray that doesn't break apart. So that's something you could probably use if you wanted to do the transition from that to bigger pots, and then just keep recycling.
And then the bigger pots you can buy at Home Depot or wherever?
Yeah, you can buy them, or they come with your nursery plants if you happen to buy something, and I just save them.
nurseries have Wasatch Shadows.
Yes.
Got just depends.
Yeah.
Online also, if you can find it.
So there are lots of variations on the theme. I bought these trays at various times and places, but I saw them at Home Depot for like $1.58 for just the tray. And you can get the whole set with the lid if you buy it. Sometimes they have little peat pots in them and peat pellets. And then just recycle that. I've used those over and over again as well.
Where do you keep your trays?
I stack them up, have a little closet in my garage.
Like right now?
Oh, right now?
In the basement or?
Yeah, I just have them in the garage.
Okay.
I just stack them up and recycle them. Yes, Sherry?
Becky, have you ever used those like pellety things that
I have.
are the soil that expand?
The little peat pellets. I
Yeah,
have used
do you
those.
like those, or do you just
Um,
like to go straight to dirt?
I like this better myself, because I've had some of those that the little outer covering, casing, really doesn't disintegrate in the soil. I have dug them up like a year later, and they don't always transplant really well. So they're not my favorite.
I've used them, and the only way I will use them is if I tear that coating off when they get big enough that I can transplant them into something else. And that way I will use them, but otherwise I won't.
But they are very convenient and very neat. You just, soak them and they. So, any other questions on?
Where do you start your plants? In the garage, is that what you were saying?
Actually, I have a basement that has a counter space. The garage would be too cold, so I have them, anywhere where you've got a surface.
Do you use a grow light like that?
We've got just a fluorescent light here. And did you want to talk about fluorescent lights now or later?
You go ahead now while you're up. and then I'll
Okay.
talk a little more. Yeah.
Okay, this is just a cheap shop light. All of those fancy, expensive grow lights, I got my information from Larry Sagers, says they do not do as well as the cheap, regular fluorescent bulb. You get a better light source there. I think I paid like $12.50, something like that, and I did see them at Home Depot for less than $13 for the set. 4 foot long, 2 bulbs, and don't get anything special. They're just, yes.
Do you ever use the heating pad underneath, or do you find that those lights are enough?
The lights have been enough.
Okay.
Yeah, and I keep the lights, because they're on the chain, you can adjust them. We just hung them here because this looked about level. But I hang them about 2 inches above the top of the tray when they're first starting, and that provides the light and a little heat source for it.
So you, since you're using that light, you have that on all through the day and don't worry so much about any direct sunlight? You don't try to put them by a
Right,
window?
24/7 until they're big enough to move out.
Warm or cool bulbs?
Just the cheap bulb. It does provide just a little bit of heat. It's not going to, when I picked it up after having it on for like the 10 days, it was still warm enough to touch, but cool enough to touch. You could feel a little warmth. It's not hot, it's not a lot.
And you can have two, you've got another place, right?
Right. We had the second one, but somewhere between my house and the car, the chain fell off of one end, so it went back out. But there are hooks here for 2, and I can get 4 trays underneath on this one. Okay.
Thank you. I
really don't have anything to add.
Okay. Just, what is really important with your trays is that they can drain well. These all have holes in the bottom. And one exception though, I've had really good luck with my onions when I just filled a flat with the soil, and then I've taken a pencil and made rows across all the way down, and I put those tiny seeds along, just spread them in and barely covered them, and just kept, I use a squirt bottle, and just keep that moist until they start coming up, and then I just water them, out of a cup into the flat, and it doesn't drain, but the onions have done really well. Yes.
I was going to say that if you don't have a tray with a very small well, you can do that too with just any of your seeds, just a plain flat, and then just sprinkle the seeds in there and then transplant them as they get bigger and recycle it that way.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. One way that I like to get my seeds started is I take a big 5-gallon bucket, I dumped potting soil in it, and then I mix it with water. I find it hard for the water to kind of seep into the soil that you have and mix well. It seems like a lot of water will drain out before it gets mixed in well. So I like to mix it all together like dough or something, and then put it in my.
Does it take, do you do it like a day before, or is it a few hours before, or does it take an hour or so?
I do it at the same time. I use warm water, and because I have my soil out where it's cold. So
Well, just because I have a hard time, I mean, it's like you do it, and it's like you have water and then powder.
I use my hands. I mix it up.
Do you just keep soil and water mixed in that bucket for how long do you choose?
She just does it immediately.
I
You just use it right there.
I do. Okay. I'll talk a little bit now about the grow lights. When I first was doing my experimentation, we didn't have grow lights. I'd get my seedlings started in the house, and then they would grow up really tall and skinny, and then they wouldn't work when you take them outside because they weren't prepared. They weren't sturdy. And so then I started, waiting until my seedlings came up, and then I'd take them outside for an hour a day, and then 2 hours, and so on when it was the warmest part of the day, and that would work, but that was sure a lot of work to keep running my seedlings out and in and keeping track of them. And so then my husband built me this frame over here, and I'll show you how I use it. These are the same fluorescent lights, and I put mine this direction underneath, and so I fit, I'm thinking 5 trays across. And as the seedlings grow, the different flats will have different plants in them, and some will be down down here, and some will be, you know, growing up pretty high. But I'll put my highest ones at one end and the lower ones down here. And then I can adjust the chains on this. And as well, sometimes I will lift up some of the shorter trays up higher. If some of my plants get too tall, then I'll put a board under one end of the frame, and I just play with it so that they're all getting the right height of the lights. And
Where do you do yours? Do you do yours in your basement as well?
do you know, I did at first, and that didn't work because where I was doing it in the basement, there was no heat. There is an optimum temperature for seeds to germinate and grow, and that's usually above 70 degrees. And so I brought it up to a big windowsill that we have, and that's where we do it now.
And you put your lights in that windowsill too?
Yes, it's a big place.
I mean, well, I've seen when you do it, but I'm just like, I never noticed that, yeah.
Uh-huh, yes,
It was the sunshine,
okay.
sun exposure.
Okay, when the plants are big enough to take outside, oh, one more thing first. Becky does not use heat underneath. You can buy expensive heat pads that are specifically for starting seedlings, but we just took an old heating pad. The only one that I had a hard time getting to germinate and grow as quickly as I would like were my peppers. And so I just wrap a towel around this and put it under the flat, and that's what I do. And then another thing I forgot to mention, over there I have a timer for my lights, because I would forget to turn them off and on. And so that timer is very helpful. And I think we leave the light on about 15 hours and then off about 9. Diana's?
I do mine about 15, 16 hours of light a day. I have them on a timer because I don't remember, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about?
Yes.
How high above the plant do you put the grow light?
A couple of inches. Yes.
Above do you use above the plastic thing or above the plastic itself?
No, I don't put a plastic thing on. I think I'm going to start that. That seems like a good idea. But above the plant itself.
Above the leaves?
Yes, yes.
Would this work with your frame outside if you had like the plastic type stuff that went over it? Would it be warm enough, or would it still keep the lights on, or would it not work?
I don't know. I don't have any experience with greenhouse type growing. I will tell you in a minute something that we do outside.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any more questions about the soil or the plants or growing them with the grow lights? Laura?
Maybe this question was asked or answered earlier and it wasn't in here, but so Becky, you leave the lights on
I
24/7?
do, yeah.
And you
And
guys
when they
turn-
get bigger, then, we start transitioning them out. But as they're germinating, I leave them on 24/7.
Why is it important to turn them off?
I don't know.
Because you're just trying to simulate.
I've been always taught to turn them off, so that a longer day, but then to turn it off just because they need to rest like everything else. So plant has 2 cycles. It's the photosynthesis during the day and respiration at night. And so I think you need to have some downtime. And the other thing I was taught is with those humidifiers, as soon, the plastic cotton on the top of them, as soon as they sprout,
Take them off.
you should take those off, otherwise they get leggy, sort of weak plants.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate input.
And if you don't have the plastic lids, I've used saran wrap, and it works just fine. And, you see them pop up and then I take the saran wrap off, but that worked well for me too.
Thank you.
Just to comment on the fluorescent lights don't put out a lot of heat. I don't know if it would be a very good heat source in that noise. There's some heat, but not a lot.
Okay, thank you. Any, yes.
Just one comment. A question was asked about, keeping it warm enough in the basement.
I put up foam around my lights, around the outside and along the top perimeter, across the rack. It keeps it warmer inside there so I can start it in a cooler environment.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, I'll just go on with a few other things that we do as we transition the plants outside. I've had really good luck. I just thought I would share with this is a lightweight insect barrier. The first time we planted broccoli, and we get those cabbage worms, and so now we just cover the broccoli plants with this. I kind of, when I spread it out, I don't spread it tight. I kind of leave it gathered up so as the plants grow, they have plenty of room, and it has worked very well. And then as well, about 3 years ago, I planted my little onion plants outside, and they all disappeared. Something ate them. They're still tiny when I plant them out, and so that was a big disappointment. And so I've started covering them as well, and with this, and that has solved my problem.
What is that called again?
It's lightweight insect barrier. Yes.
It's also called floating row cover,
Okay.
and you can find it in a lot of the seed catalogs.
Mhm.
And I think there are places that you can get them here too. But I use that for corn and beans and beets and everything. And it keeps the quail from eating them. We've got quail.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Yes.
Just hypothesizing, but if you have a flowering plant, like tomatoes or corn, something that produces a fruit, you'd keep any pollinators out. Wouldn't that
That's probably true.
keep your tomatoes from ever setting? or from ever-
Never had to use it for tomatoes. You haven't, have you?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
So
When it gets big
I think you want to
enough.
be careful that you weren't keeping away pollinating insects.
You're right on that.
All the broccoli wouldn't matter.
No.
Yes, and the onions, after they get big enough, I take it off. I just to start them, I put it on. Any other questions? Yes.
Just about how you put it out, you just lay it over, do you have to tack it down?
Oh, yes, you have to tack it down.
Like
We cover the edges with soil, or if we're going to be removing it, we just put lots of rocks around it. You could put boards, any way you could keep it down. They have those little U-hooks that you could use. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to talk about just a couple other things. First of all, the tomatoes and peppers, you wouldn't start normally until about mid-March. We put them out usually around mid-May, but you can get a head start. I usually plant a few plants out in April in these walls of water, and that has worked very well. I like to warm the soil a little first, and we'll lay down a sheet of clear plastic on the soil, and then the sun will warm that up, and then I'll go ahead and fill my wells with water and plant my plants in the soil. Also, for the plants that you plant in mid-May, mid to late May, and that only take 2 or 3 weeks to germinate and get large enough, I usually will plant them right out in a flat in this cold frame. My husband has made a cold frame here, and you can look at it later. It's just a simple frame, a piece of glass over the top, that he has made it so that I can open it just a little bit, or I can open it clear wide, just depending on the day. If the day's really windy or a little cool, then I don't open it very much. And as well, I'll fill up a few bottles with water and put them in to keep some heat in there so it's hot at night. If it's going to freeze at night, I generally also will cover it with a couple of old blankets and to keep it warm in there.
Do you put your water jugs in the cold frame or
Yes,
around the outside?
inside the cold
So
frame.
you fill them with warm water or something? and put them in?
I fill them with water, the sun warms them.
Oh, during the day?
Mhm. And that saves a little space inside and a little time of running them in and out. All of my plants, before I plant them in the garden, I'll usually transfer to the cold frame for a couple of days. They have some protection with the walls around them, and then they'll be ready to put out in the garden. I will mention this too. This is just kind of a fun thing that my husband did. He built a taller one, like twice this tall, and he insulated it, and then he put a double pane of glass on top. And we will plant usually one of our tomato plants out real early, even early March. And because of the insulation, and then I have as well a whole lot of water bottles in there around the plant. And it will give it a little bit earlier start. That will be our earliest tomato plant generally. Yes?
In the cold frame, are you planting, is that in the ground, or are you just putting the flats in there?
I'm just putting the flats in there, with the exception of the one I just told you about, and then I'll plant the tomato in the ground.
Okay, so you have that over your dirt outside?
Yes,
So you
yes.
can go, okay.
Yes, and with the walls of water, and with this last cold frame that I spoke about, if it is not a warm season, I'll leave those on as late as June, middle of June, and just add protection and heat for the plants. Yes? Yeah. Was there a question or comment? Yes, Laura?
So how early are you eating your first fresh tomato?
That varies every year.
I'm sure it's
We have Father's Day sometimes, and sometimes not. Any other questions? Yes?
I read somewhere that you could use the 7-Up bottles as walls of water. Has anyone ever tried that?
I would think it would be good. I mean, like the 2-liter bottles that you would.
Yeah, a 2-liter bottle.
I will tell you what we did try. We tried milk jugs as walls of water, and that did not work near as well as these. I think with the walls of water, if it becomes cold, I'll run out and kind of push a little bit of the water out and pull the top together, put a rubber band around it so that I don't know if I need to do that, but I feel like I'm protecting my plant a little more.
I think it's a good idea, because I've done it to where I haven't closed the top off, and the rest of the plant is good down below, but the top part gets the frost, and
Okay,
it kills the top part.
okay. Then I don't leave it closed. When the sun comes out and it warms up again, I put more water back in and open it up. So, you can tell from what we've been talking about that starting your plants yourself is a lot of work. And there is cost involved, and so you have to evaluate if you want to get into it that much or not. Okay, I think that's all I've prepared. Did you have anything else back here, Diana?
I get my flats at Walmart at the end of the season,
Oh,
buy them on clearance and just keep them, I'm
So
too.
you don't
Thank
reuse
you.
yours?
I don't like, I do, some I reuse, but I started out with just doing 2 flats, and now I'm up to way more than that, and so it's kind of addictive. It really is, so.
yes.
Do you do your flowers too?
I have done some, yes.
What kind do you use?
I like to do impatiens, they do really well. Petunias, geraniums, I've done those.
Do you do geraniums from seed or just kind
I
of?
do seed geraniums when but petunias are really easy to start, and I like to think I'm saving some money. Sometimes I wonder, but.
I've done dianthus, can't remember the names. I've done quite a few.
Marigolds, zinnias, I mean, I'll try anything that.
Sunflowers work well. So,
does it, cost to build one of these,
Steve,
lights and then?
how much did you spend? We just built one for our son, and with this wooden frame,
Oh,
what cost?
well, you've got the lights, I think that, probably $50, I think. Well, the light fixtures themselves are like $12, and then the lights are, I don't remember, but I think around $50 for the whole thing.
Including the frame?
Yeah,
And you use the wood, not the PVC?
yeah, I used to wear it. I mean, it's out there in our living area, I wanted it to look sort of nice. So, the wood's not very expensive, the expensive part are actually the light bulbs. I think those are the most expensive part.
Do you go through those a lot?
No, those on there are probably about 20 years old, or 15 or 20 years old, I don't know, they last a long time.
Yes. I did go looking and I believe the bulbs came included in the shop lights.
It's been a while since I.
And it was like 12 something
Well,
per set.
I gotta tell you, I just bought some, I made some for one of our kids, and
Yeah.
they,
They don't
maybe
anymore.
they used to, but they don't come with them anymore.
But that is the most
Yeah.
expensive.
So
The PVC, the 10-foot, that's half inch PVC that I've used, a 10-foot length is like $1.73. The hardest thing to find is the slip-on joints. I found them at Sprinkler World a couple of years ago when I made that. And the little hooks are like $4 for $1 each. Not very expensive.
So once you do your initial setup, it doesn't cost a lot. to
Doesn't
do
cost
this.
anything more.
It's just buying your seat pretty much, and your soil, which is not very much.
Yes.
Where do you get your seed?
I usually order mine from catalog, and, I don't know if I'm supposed to mention names. Is that okay? These are some that I've used in the past. I have Gurney's here and Park Seed, and this is Baker Creek Heirloom Seed. This is a real temptation because they have lots of exotic things. And I have found 3 or 4 real treasures in here, and then some things that look really fun haven't worked as
What's it
well.
called again? It's hard to read it. What's that one called again?
This is called Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds.
Is there a reason why you order magazines rather than?
It's a strong temptation, I think.
So it's not because they're better? It's not because they're better then?
It's because they send you a seed
I
catalog.
don't know if they're better. What experience have you had?
I've done it from the catalogs as well, but I found that IFA has a huge variety, and a lot of their varieties are the ones that work well in our climate. So I've had really good luck at IFA.
That, I think, is a good recommendation, because I think that's the problem with ordering from catalogs, is they are selling to everyone, and they're not specific to our area. And so,
Do you save your seeds from year to year?
I do. I save my seeds in a cold place downstairs. Usually after about 5 years, I'll throw them out, although they still would be good longer than that, but the success rate will start going down. There's a couple of kinds that don't last that long. I've discovered parsnips only will last for a couple of years. But most of them will last several years, yes.
There's a local place, Mountain Land Seed. Earl Crane and I bought some seed 15, 20 years ago, and I'm still using it.
Thank you.
But they sell them both. They sell all different levels. But if you can get some neighbors together and go buy some seed we want, we shared the seed and bought bulk, and it was very inexpensive.
Thank you.
Where's it at?
Where's that at?
17th South, right next, about 400 West.
Okay. Thank you.
Mountain
It's called
Lakes.
Mountain
It's
Valley.
Mountain.
It's Mountain Valley.
Is it Mountain Valley?
Mountain Valley Seed.
Okay. But that's 17th South and about 4th West.
And they grow it here, so it works well. Because they do.
Yes, Laura.
So, and I interrupted you when you started to talk about this, so now you talk about me. Back to the table of when to start things,
Yes.
because I don't really know, even when a
Yes, basically, there's the cold weather seeds, and most of those can go into the ground after the soil has dried out, and you can till it, and then you can plant your seeds in the ground at that time. And that is generally mid-April, early April, mid-April, sometimes late March.
What are those?
And those would be lettuce and kale, Swiss chard, broccoli, onions,
Radishes.
yes, radishes, peas,
Spinach.
These are early.
yes, peas.
Like they-
Okay. And on the back of, if you have the seed packet on the back, it will tell you about when to plant it.
The seed packet has a wealth of information on it, it really does.
Yes.
Do you ever winter, like, keep some things in the ground after the fall, like peas or onions?
Now, yes, but usually onions I'll harvest. You harvest them when the tops start to fall over, and that is usually late July into August. Some that I've kept in the ground, I've sometimes planted garlic in the fall, covered it with straw. We used to grow carrots until they got this worm, and we haven't tried it since then, but for quite a few years we planted carrots and would cover them with straw and then go out and dig them all winter, and they keep in the ground. Anybody else have experience with Sherry?
We've done spinach where we planted it in the fall and put leaves over the top, and then in the spring it will pop right back up again.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's spinach.
I thought you didn't harvest my spinach very well.
I've had very good luck with letting my lettuce go to seed and my arugula, and then it pops
Just
back up.
grows.
Just grow
It's
very
Grows
sometimes,
good.
everywhere.
it's a nuisance sometimes, yes.
Last year, we let the snow cover over our carrot crop, and then we harvested it in the spring, and they were great.
Good, good, thank you. Yes.
We just did that too, we did it by accident, but we did it.
Okay.
They grew really well.
All right, thank you very much. Yes?
Question on lettuce. Is there a secret? It seems like when it really warms up, the lettuce gets really bitter. Is there anything you can do to keep it from?
Not that I know of. There are some varieties of lettuce they'll say slow to bolt, and so they keep longer before they go to seed. But once it starts to heat up,
Lettuce is done.
yeah, your lettuce is done.
And should you stagger the planting, like on the lettuce and kale and stuff like that?
I don't, just because we have such a short season. Now, the kale, you can keep cutting, and the Swiss chard as well, keep cutting, and it'll keep coming back
Is
up.
kale, I thought that the kale, if you just cut it up, it will come up the next year, but it's a perennial.
I don't know. I have one of the
Sometimes,
gardens.
Sherry, sometimes the Swiss chard
I
and
left
kale.
mine over there.
Depends on how mild your winter is.
I left mine just, well, it was my sister that told me that, but where she keeps hers is kind of a little protected. But it's just like, yeah, all summer you can cut that kale. It was awesome. It was really good.
Yes.
Do the cold weather vegetables, do you know if they need direct sunlight, or can they be where there's some shade?
Ours all have direct sunlight, so I don't know. You had experience?
Most everything should have direct sunlight unless it specifies shade.
Vaguely remember as a kid, I spent my summers every year at my relatives, and they had these big trees, and most of the morning it got direct sunlight, then the rest of the afternoon it was just filtered shade. And they had a wonderful cold garden.
Yes, I think you don't need full sunlight all day, but
I think 6 hours is what I've heard as kind of a minimum, 6 hours of full sun.
okay, any other questions?
Just a quick comment.
Yes.
The average last frost of the year, I've heard is being May 15th. So if you plan around May 15th for your plants to go in the warmer weather, where they say plant after danger of frost, that sometimes there's sometimes isn't. I planted things at the end of May and they've been totally wiped out. But that's kind of a good way to judge when you're starting, is plan about, to go out about 15th for the warm.
And I check the weather forecast. If it's the 15th of May and the prediction is that the weather's gonna dip down to 40, that could mean 30 here in South Jordan. And so I wait. You're better off waiting if it's still cold. They're not going to grow and flourish anyway when it's cold outside.
Yeah, that's kind of average, so you know it's earlier and later.
Okay. Yes?
I've been reading about something called winter sowing. Have you ever done that?
No.
We'll talk more about that in September.
Oh, good.
I'll tell you about a couple things. When, are you?
I'm done. I'm done.
Okay.